Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Today I'd like to talk about the visible and the invisible. Now, the phrasing comes from the Nicene Creed, which begins, I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible. Now, the visible I think we tend to have fairly well covered, but the invisible is kind of an interesting category. Because in a Christian context, this includes a lot of things, but really especially calls to mind, I think, the spiritual world. But there's a lot of the physical world, which is also invisible. And the curious thing is, that was not well known, say a few hundred years ago. And it's not all that well known now, in the sense of almost nobody has an understanding of a physicist specializing in the relevant invisible phenomena, like magnetism or electromagnetic radiation, and so on, or gravity, for example. There are things we can see the effects of, but we can't see them. And so, though nobody really knows them that well, we have a general feeling that we do. Now, consider magnetism. A few hundred years ago, you might have lodestones which weren't all that powerful, but here's a neodymium magnet. 1 inch, it's a 1 inch cylinder, 1 inch long, 1 inch in diameter. This thing is remarkably powerful on our scale. In a really proper, technical sense, it's electromagnetism that holds this, fairly heavy wrench, together. I can pull as hard as I want, and I have no hope whatsoever of pulling it apart because the magnetic attraction inside the thing is so incredibly strong. But outside of individual objects, nonetheless, this is quite strong. Now, you can't see anything between these two, and, up against my arm does nothing, and yet there's this invisible field. It's so strong once it gets close, I can't hold it away, that is really good at holding this thing up. So, despite it being heavy, there's this invisible force which is holding this. And yet, here we come, I think, to familiarity breeds contempt. There's a drywall screw, up there. Hold it. Familiarity breeds contempt. Most people have metal refrigerators with magnets holding things up against the refrigerator. We use magnets all over the place. And again, with electromagnetic radiation, we have cell phones and laptops and so on that use radio waves to communicate. And so we're so used to the idea of having these radio waves around that are useful and so on, that they feel familiar to us, even though we know very little about them. Things like, if you ever look up antenna design, it's astonishing just how insanely complex antenna design in fact is. Yet we kind of just know there are antennas, and even though most of us have no hope of designing a decent antenna, nonetheless, we kind of feel like we know them. And again, gravity. Strange thing. Gravity holds these, for one thing, the fact that unlike, okay, so why is this thing not a magnet? It's not a magnet, because it's got masses of electrons and masses of protons, and the electrons and the protons sort of balance each other out so that all of the fields, counteract each other rather. And so there's no real magnetic field outside of this thing. The magnet has the very, very odd property that doesn't quite hold, although it comes fairly close. Gravity has the really, really bizarre property that it doesn't cancel out, that it adds. Gravity goes through things. The gravity that holds the moon when the moon's directly above you is going right through you, and in fact you're kind of adding to it. And yet, despite this odd strangeness, despite the fact that these giant bodies are held in space near each other by this invisible force that can go right through things, nonetheless, we kind of feel like it's familiar because, of course, we're used to phenomena like, hey, look, it fell. Now, just as a funny side note, we're so used to this. I was using gravity as an example one time, well, a bunch of times actually, because I've had the same conversation over and over again with atheists for pretty much every conversation I've ever had with atheists, but in any event. I was talking about the fact that you can't see gravity, you can only infer its effects. You can't detect it directly, you have to reason to its existence from the effects that it has upon things. And of course they were incredulous because, well, anyway. So, one of them then decided this must mean that I don't believe in gravity. Well, actually a bunch of them did. Again, it's the same thing over and over. But anyway, just taking one of them. Didn't believe in gravity. And so I said, okay, if you don't believe in gravity, then drop something and watch it not fall then. Har, har, har. And that's probably supposed to be voiced a little bit differently, but it was, Anyway. I then asked him, so does that mean that a helium balloon disproves gravity in your world? He didn't take it very well. Neither did the other, 4 or 5 that I've had that same conversation with. Anyway, magnets are another one. Like, here's this, it's heavy. I can go like this with it. And it falls, and it falls heavily in my hand. And yet, I can put it against the ceiling, and it doesn't fall. Gravity disproven, according to some atheists who really want to win conversations more than come to true conclusions. But anyway, leaving them aside for the moment, we're really, 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 really used to gravity in the sense of we're familiar with it, keeping us on the ground, making us fall towards the ground. And so when we hear basically that this same thing that makes us come towards the ground is the same thing that makes planets orbit each other, okay, you can kind of imagine how this sort of thing would work, right? And in any event, we clearly, experience it around. So we feel like we're familiar with this invisible force with these really, really strange properties that we never ever think about. And I think this has a curious psychological effect that didn't used to obtain, but has since the discovery and the widespread knowledge about these phenomena, that we've gotten used to thinking like large portions of the world are understood. Now, no one actually understands gravity. Scientific descriptions of gravity are descriptions of how gravity works. They aren't explanations for it. And someone, I'm sure, will bring up the shortest path through time-space stuff. That is, again, a description that things have this property of seeming to take the shortest path through time-space. And, when you do it the right way, and in gravitational fields, the shortest path through time-space involves actually moving, etc. Yeah, I know. That is not, however, an explanation as to why it happens. That's essentially just pushing the question back very slightly. So, we don't really understand these things. We don't really know their properties. I mean, there are formulas involving them that we, can use to describe how their properties work, but we don't know what it is about mass that really creates this. I mean, there's a theory that mass warps space, and there's, say, like gravitational lensing, where clearly it does in some regards warp space, but, again, it's pushing it back one thing. How does it warp space, etc.? So leaving aside the simple pushing back of issues a little bit, you get to the curious state in which we have all these things we don't really understand, but we feel like we do. And I believe that impacts the human psyche a bit. That people in the modern world don't have the proper sense of wonder or of awe, because we're used to thinking of all sorts of things we're completely unfamiliar with in terms of things that we are familiar with. And it's natural enough that stuff gets taught like this. It's very natural. And, in some cases there's unification, that like the thing we're familiar with also, does these other much stranger things, like in the case of gravity, say, of moving the moon around and so on. And yet, ideally, the proper reaction should be to be kind of astonished at the fact that when you jump up, you fall down again. It shouldn't be to become utterly blasé about the fact that the moon moves through the sky. Apparently, or, really, if you want to take a relativity stance and, use this as a center of your frame of reference. And define sky appropriately, too. So I think that there's something really fascinating about this, that we have, oddly enough, through discovering so many things, come about to a sort of fatigue in which we're so used to various things that we think we understand, and especially that various things that are strange being related in terms of things that aren't so strange to us, that we've grown tired of actually regarding them properly, that we've gotten used to the idea of this sort of like lazy thinking that we know everything, thinking that we understand everything. And very often it's very few people read enough books to even be in a position to claim that they do. Even if we're this exhaustive, most people are in the position of sort of knowing that there exist books that you could read to find out these things. Let alone no one's ever done all the experiments on their own to find these things out. But that's a separate issue. That we have a strange sort of fatigue of wonder. That we don't know how to wonder properly, because we don't have really very much of a theoretical distinction between the familiar and the unfamiliar. That we're used to thinking of everything as being just some sort of manifestation of the familiar. And I think you can see this in the attitude that many secular people take, where for anything that happens, they kind of want to regard it instinctively. Not like volitionally, but just instinctively, though sometimes coming over into volitionally. They want to believe it's something familiar. They want to believe it's something they already know about. They don't want to believe that it's something out of their experience. And I think there's some explanation there, related in that way to the invisible, that we're so used to many of the wonders of the world being explained in terms of familiar stuff that we've gotten used to thinking that's normal. And of course, it isn't normal at all. It's almost an optical illusion, you might say. But anyway, just in terms of, my goal isn't here to try to inculcate that sense of wonder, but just to sort of look at why that sense of wonder may largely be absent. So, anyway, it's an interesting phenomena, why that happens, and I think it has some explanatory power, where people get this sort of, almost universal boredom from. So, until next time, may you hit everything you aim at.